Hey guys, it's Nathan from Modern Rifleman here with another suppressor review. Today we're going to be taking a look at the SR7 from AAC. This was recently sent over by the folks at Silencer Shop, and we greatly appreciate their help on getting this into our hands. Now, the surprising thing about the SR7 is you don't hear a whole lot about it, or at least you haven't in the press. AAC's a well-established brand at this point, but it seems that a lot of folks who have been looking for 30 caliber suppressors have kind of been chasing the new hot thing and some of the newer brands that have come out. But AAC's been well-established, and the SR7 is currently their flagship 30 caliber suppressor. Now, one of the reasons that might be that folks haven't gravitated towards the SR7, at least in the couple of years that it's been out, is that it is a little bit heavy. All in, the suppressor weighs 19.7 ounces with a 4-ounce thereabout mount. You're looking at a package that's almost 24 ounces. So it's not necessarily the lightest suppressor on the market. It is an intermediate length 30 caliber suppressor at about 7 3/8 inches long. So it's kind of right there in the middle. It's definitely not a shorty can, but it's also not like the 9-inch long 30 caliber suppressors that seemed to be really popular a few years ago, but have sort of phased out as far as things go. Because it is their flagship 30 caliber suppressor, it does have AAC's latest attachment method, which is still a ratcheting style QD system, but it is the 90 tooth mount as opposed to the old 51 tooth mount, and the 90 tooth is supposed to address some of the issues that folks were running into with the 51 tooth models. We'll get into that in just a moment. I'll show you how the mount works and all that stuff. In terms of build, part of the reason that the suppressor is fairly heavy is that it is stainless steel and Inconel. You got a 316L stainless steel tube, which is off and on been kind of the standard for suppressor bodies. You'll see a few different types of stainless steels out there, but it's just a fairly popular material. And then inside you've got a fully Inconel baffle stack. What that means is that 1, it's full auto rated. 2, this thing is rated up to 308 on a 10-inch barrel. So you can put this on a very, very short 308. Not necessarily recommending it, because I think the thought of a 10-inch 308 rifle sounds pretty brutal, but it certainly can do that. So you've got a very, very rugged suppressor, capable of doing maybe a few things that some of the lighter models aren't necessarily capable of. So let's talk a little bit about that mount before we move into some of the shooting video. Right here I've got the 90 tooth flash hider that comes with the suppressor. It's mounted on my 300 blackout SBR upper. And the interesting thing about this is, in the previous 51 tooth iteration, and even the 18 tooth iteration before that, it was really just a simple twist on and ratchet in place system. Now, the 90 tooth doesn't necessarily change that. It's still got coarse threads at the front of the suppressor, the ratchets on the back, obviously this time more teeth, 90 of them, so a little bit finer, more precise mount as far as the ratcheting goes, but it's also got a taper right in front of those teeth to help not only align the suppressor, but create a nice seal, keep it in place, and to eliminate some of that wobble that the 51 tooth variation was prone to experiencing. So I know a lot of folks that really bothered them. Having used a few of the 51 tooth suppressors, after use, getting some carbon buildup, it wasn't really that big a deal, but I can certainly understand why it would bother some folks. Most of the time it was just a rotational wobble. That's not necessarily something to be concerned about. What you really need to be concerned about is when you've got lateral movement in the suppressor, which I never experienced with the 51 tooth system, but the 90 tooth system seems to address all of those issues. Attaching the suppressor to the 90 tooth system is exactly the same as the older variants. You can hear that ratcheting as I twist it on. And then, boom, take it to that last spot and just leave it in place. There's no need to to bring out the strap wrench and try and tighten this thing down, anything ridiculous. Just get to that last tooth that you're comfortable twisting it to, and it's rock solid. There is no rotational movement in this thing at all. Definitely an improvement over the previous design, but to be honest with you, I'm still not huge on ratcheting systems. I kind of wonder if we'll see some wear on this locking arm on the suppressor, kind of like folks that have the 51 tooth systems have had. I have to think that that's not going to be an issue. I haven't heard about that being an issue for folks out there. So overall though, it's an improvement over the 51 tooth. Removing the can is very simple. You simply hit the button on the ratchet, which is right here, and then untwist. Now you're going to want to hold that button down as you untwist, because there is quite a bit of ratchet engagement that occurs as you're twisting. I mean, you hit those teeth pretty early, and there's still quite a few rotations that you have to go through before you get to that bottom. So when you're unscrewing, you have to be cognizant of that, and then the can just comes right off. The other thing I noticed about the design, and I don't know if this is intentional or not, I have to think it was that there are a few ridges. You can kind of see them right up here behind the prongs that seem to do a pretty good job of catching some of that debris, some of that carbon, maybe lead buildup that gets kicked back towards the rifle and could gum up that mount. Those seem to kind of capture some of that debris and keep it from getting to the threads or even back to the taper. So smart design. It's definitely an improvement over previous ratcheting designs that AAC has used, and I think a lot of shooters are going to appreciate that. So now that we've explained how this thing attaches to the rifle, let's take it out and see how it sounds. Alright, so now that you guys have had a chance to check out that range footage, I hope you have a better feel for approximately how the SR7 sounds. I know using a camera and watching it back on video is never really a great way to get a feel for the true sound of a suppressor in person, but overall the SR7 it's a respectable performer. Certainly in line with other cans that are this size and length, although I know a lot of you have said to me that, hey, it's a loud 30 caliber suppressor. It might be, but from the shooter's perspective, it sounded a whole heck of a lot like many of the other suppressors I've tried. So you gotta kind of balance those expectations, I think, with what's been measured at the muzzle for the can versus the shooter's perspective. Now, having said that, I was a little bit surprised by the performance of the SR7 on my PTR 91. Now, the PTR 91 and really any HK G3 style rifle is quite sensitive to ammo pressure and the back pressure you get off of that, because it is a blowback system, albeit delayed blowback. But I did notice that when I put the SR7 on my PTR 91, that gun got a little bit violent. I was hitting the roof of the shooting line with casings, which I know, once again, the HK style rifles are known for kicking casings a mile away, but this was even a little bit more than that, and I've not quite experienced that with any other suppressor to date, so I was a little bit surprised. That being said, I don't think that necessarily meant that at-ear performance was horrendous for the SR7. It certainly wasn't what I would consider to be hearing safe, though. That's fairly standard for 30 caliber cans in general when put on a 308. You're looking at probably a hair over 140 decibels at the ear, just enough to get, wasn't really a ringing, but that's just enough to be noticeable in my right ear that, hey, I need to be wearing some extra hearing protection here. So, like I said, it's fairly standard for a 30 caliber can on a 308, so kind of comes with the territory. On this guy, my 8.5 inch barreled 300 blackout SBR, the SR7 did quite well. Definitely hearing safe on this. Probably at the shooter's ear, looking at mid 130s, mid to low 130s, I guess, on decibel readings. But once again, that's not scientific. That's just based on comparisons with other models that I've tested. The only thing that was a little bit disappointing, though, on the 300 blackout that I didn't notice simply because of the sound volume of the PTR was that, I'm going to take this off for a moment and show you guys that flash hider again. It's a pronged flash hider, much like a lot of companies have these days, and AAC's had these forever, but this 3-pronged flash hider rings like a tuning fork. I don't know if I can replicate it. It's not going to do it for me, of course. But it rings like a tuning fork when you shoot it. In fact, you can actually hear that ringing over the action noise when the weapon cycles. Go ahead and tighten it back down. So that was a little bit disappointing because here I am, I'm shooting this on a 300 blackout, with subsonic ammunition. It's supposed to sound great, and then after each shot I can just hear this high-pitched ring. And it would linger for probably a couple seconds or until I fired the next round, at which point I was just renewing that ring. So, a little bit disappointing there. Other companies have made modifications to their pronged flash hiders in order to avoid that, whether it be shortening one of the prongs. You can even drill a hole in one of the prongs, which if this were my suppressor and my mount, I probably would drill a hole in one of them to see if that would cut down on some of the ringing. But when you're shooting on a subsonic gun like this, or with subsonic ammo like I was with this 300 blackout, and it's supposed to be quiet, and then when you can hear that ringing over the top of it, it's a little bit of a disappointment. So, fortunately, AAC has a number of different mounting options, even in the 90 tooth, but the flash hider is fairly standard. It comes with the can, so to have that ringing was a little bit disappointing. Overall, though, the SR7 really did surprise me. Yes, it's heavy, a little bit heavier than I'd like. I know it's well built, but there are plenty of other well built suppressors out there that are lighter than this one. AAC's got a pretty crowded rifle suppressor selection right now, and I think they probably have some opportunities to pare that down, to consolidate some of those offerings, and I would love to see them come out with something similar to the SR7 but lighter. Perhaps using a little bit of titanium, maybe cutting back on some of the Inconel in there in favor of stainless steel, which is about 10% lighter depending on how you use it. But overall, like I said, it's a solid suppressor. It comes in at almost right around $720 at Silencer Shop, depending on your local powered by dealer and what they've set their pricing to. So it's reasonably priced, right there probably with the rest of the 30 caliber suppressors out there, and certainly worth consideration, especially if you're a fan of AAC or you like this 90 tooth mounting system, like that reassurance of having a ratchet holding it down as well as the taper, as well as the threads. I mean, it's a very secure mounting system, although those teeth probably, if you're not careful or you're just really abusive to your rifles, you could damage those teeth on the taper or on the ratchet. But overall, it's a great mount as far as security goes, and a huge improvement over the 51 tooth. Now, as always, I will have a link in the description of this video for the full written review. That will have higher resolution photos, a closer look at the SR7, and maybe some of the details that I forgot to mention in this video. Once again, I want to thank the folks at Silencer Shop for sending this suppressor over to us. We couldn't do this without their help. And if you guys like what you've seen in this video, be sure to subscribe to the channel, as I'm trying to keep as much suppressor content coming as I can. Thanks for watching, guys.